Hello, everybody. Small card reveal today, and by small, I mean the most impactful card of the set revealed so far. So BlizzCon is going on right now, and they've released the first card of BlizzCon. I think there's at least 2 or 3 more to come, but I don't know how they're going to trump this one. Well, here we go. It is the first neutral hero ever produced. Reno the Lone Ranger. 8 mana, you gain 5 armor when you play it. If your deck has no duplicates, empty the enemy board and limit to 1 minion for a turn. It's high noon. And his hero power is Reno's Hand Cannon. 2 mana, you shoot a magic bullet. If you want to know what the magic bullets are, here is a list of them. They include the Arcane Bullet that does 2 damage. In fact, they all do 2 damage, so let's just get that clear. And then they all have different secondary effects. So Arcane Bullet refreshes 2 mana crystals. The Fell does draw a card. Fire is 1 to all enemy minions. Frost is gain 4 armor. Hole is give a random friendly minion +2/+2. Nature is discover a spell. And Shadow is summon a random 3-cost minion. Just as an aside while I'm here, since, I'm only going to do 1 card this video. If you're an enjoyer of Wild, if you have Caldera Drake in your deck and you get the Arcane Bullet, you win the game. Right? Because you're going to do 2 damage, you can target the opponent's face with that, obviously. It refreshes 2 mana crystals, and Caldera Drake's effect is if you use your every time you use your hero power, you can just keep using your hero power over and over again, so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? You can just push the button 15 times, you can push the button 50 times, you can push it 100 times, it doesn't matter what their health is, you will kill them, unless it's, in the tens of thousands, in which case you might actually time out for the game. And then each one of these swap each turn. But honestly, this isn't the problem with this card, and I have some big problems with this card. In fact, I have some very big problems with this card. The effects of all of these are generally fine, like the Arcane Bullet with Caldera Drake and Wild, I'm sure that'll be rectified by some means. However, going back to the hero himself, Reno, just let's read this again. If your deck has no duplicates, so you have to run a Highlander, empty the enemy board. Not your board, just your opponent's, and it's not destroying, it's emptying the board. And limit to 1 minion for a turn. Now, what does empty mean? It means that if you have a jailer on your side of the board, nope, you don't anymore, it's gone. It's emptied. Not destroyed, just emptied. That Stoneborn general you had, or any minion with a death rattle, you're not getting the death rattle effect. It's been emptied from the board. Not destroyed, emptied. It even goes further than minions. You have Prison of Yogg-Spunn on the board or any location. Nope, that's on the board. It empties it, it gets rid of it. Even weird entities like the Twisting Nether. If that's on the board, Reno will clear it. He will get rid of everything. And then your response to this turn, which by the way is a huge tempo swing, it's like, bear in mind Twisting Nether is 8 mana. Very occasionally he's playing control decks. A little bit too weak nowadays, but it would seem like the king of control, right? Reno Lone Ranger is that on steroids. It's not a symmetrical effect. It only affects the enemy board. And what's worse is whatever you've got left over on your board after you've done this, your opponent can only respond with 1 minion. That is so hyper toxic. It's unreal. The biggest problem I've got with this, though, is it makes some decks that are coming out with this expansion just not viable. Excavation Death Knight, which I didn't think was actually going to be a particularly strong deck now that we've seen all of the cards, you can't play this deck anymore because your big minion that you wanted to go into your Resurrect pool, Reno will just whoosh it away. It won't be there. So you'll have nothing to reborn back, or it won't be as powerful at least. So that deck is just dead. Purified Dragon Nest from Druid. I was going to rate this as a tier 1 deck. Probably only just into the tier 1 status. But I thought it had enough value and enough big swing turns that it could actually, maybe put enough pressure on to beat some of these combo decks. The Purified Dragon's Nest, Reno will purify it again for you. Now, there is a little bit of counterplay to this with Rheastraza, because you can always bounce Rheastraza back to your hand, but that's such a scary thing to do. You have to spend 2 mana or 3 mana, bouncing a card back to your hand. So you've basically spent 10 mana to do nothing on a turn. There's a lot of situations where you just cannot afford to do that, but if you know you're going into a Highlander deck, you have to assume it has Reno in the deck now, so if you're accepting you're eventually going to run out of the Purified Dragon Nest, then so be it. They might be able to get enough value from that, though, just before Reno comes to the board, or maybe that's what they're going to hope. Finally, and this isn't a bigger one, because I couldn't really fit this into any deck, Kingpin Pud. Already people think he's a bit of a dud. He definitely is now, because his Ogre gang will not be resurrected, as Reno will poof them away. So I don't think it's ever a great idea to kill off like 2 of your archetypes, or near kill off 2 of your archetypes before the set has even come to fruition. Then my other issue with this card is you have to run this in a control deck now. You're going to be running Highlander control decks, even if the class didn't have a Highlander payoff. Like, Warlock didn't have it, Warrior didn't have it, Death Knight didn't have it, and I think those 3 control decks have to run it now. Like, you can't go into the control Warlock matchup with Sargarius, and your opponent has Reno. Even if their deck is slightly weaker, the turn that they Reno your Sargarius, they get rid of your Twisting Nether, you've had it. Your infinite value is gone. You have to run this card in that deck. Control Warrior, similar. They can build up this big board. They might have to run Reno again as a board clear. Control Warrior could probably deal with having a Highlander deck as well, but it's such a weird design space. I like to put this in as a neutral card. Similarly, Blood Death Knight, they're probably going to want to run this card as a huge board clear. It's like board clear plus disruption. I just hate it so much. I hate it so much. And what's worse is, like, control decks, I say, will want it. It's going to really kill mid-range decks. Like, if you're very aggressive, you'll get out in front before this comes onto the field and you could win. If you're a super long-range, like, value control deck, then you might be able to generate, like, you know, infinite value beyond the Reno. Combo decks don't give a shit about this because, you know, why do they care about their board? They have the combo pieces in their hand. Remember, they're not playing the same game you are. They're playing, like, Rummikub instead. So they literally won't care about this. But mid-range decks will care a lot. They're probably going to set up some sort of big value turn. It's just as, like, your mid-range decks are peaking around, you know, 8 mana. The opponent drops Reno on the board, you've just had it. You won't catch up again. So decks I think the stonks are going to go up on. I think Rainbow Mage, combo deck, is going to be way better. It's already a tier 1 deck. It's going to be tier 1-ier. Odin Warrior, I think, also doesn't particularly care about this card too much. They may even run it in their own deck. As I said, I think control decks will love to run this card. I think you'll see Highlander Odin Warrior decks. Again, though, at its core, it's almost like a combo deck. You just want to get Odin onto the board. After he's on the board, his effect's gone through, so it doesn't really matter anymore, Reno's effect. And they're also pretty good at responding to boards without using minions. Plague Death Knight is also going to have stonks through the roof because your deck has to have no duplicates. What is good at putting duplicate cards into an opponent's deck? Plagues. You stick in, you know, 4 plagues. One of them has to be a duplicate, right? There's only 3 to choose from. So I think a lot of people on launch are going to be playing Plague Death Knight to kill all the Highlander decks, and I don't think it's a particularly good idea. Like, why have you put in, like, consecutive sets Plagues plus Highlander? Things that put a lot of, you know, copies of the same card in the deck versus things that don't want copies in the deck. It's mind-boggling. And then the cards with such, like, disruptive presence and accessibility to every single class, I just don't understand it. Other things, this ain't even a deck. Steam Cleaner stonks are going to go through the roof because you're probably going to want a Steam Cleaner in your Reno decks now. It's going to be one of your singleton cards. Because you want to purify your deck of all these pesky plagues and the snake oils and all that jazz. So expect to see Steam Cleaner in most decks. Mech Rogue, I think, is also going to be a big winner from this, because I think it's going to be too quick for Reno to ever come to the field. And then finally, I've put in here the Excavation Warlock package. I think it's going to be strengthened. Like, there was probably reasons why, before this card came out, you say, you know what, I'm just going to stick with my control Warlock I've got now with Sargarius. It's fine, right? Well, now with the Excavation Warlock package, where you're reducing your opponent's health by 10 at a time, and then maybe bouncing the card back and playing it again, and you get the drill. This can't disrupt that. You can just keep playing it, bouncing it, playing it, bouncing. You can be very careful with it, and you'll just kill Reno through that. So I think those decks will all get a big boon. And again, it's a shame that a lot of these decks are getting boons of decks that are pretty strong right now, as is. Stomp's going down. Control decks. It's mutually assured destruction. You have to run this in your control deck. If you're not running it in your control deck and your opponent is, you're going to lose a huge amount of value, which is a problem because control normally gets beaten by combo decks, and combo decks don't really care about this card. So you've got control decks running this card that is suboptimal versus the combo deck, and you're just making the combo decks match up better into the control one. It's just such a twisted card. But I said you're going to have to run into it. As I said, mid-range decks will hate this. They won't be fast enough to burn you down. They won't generate enough value to outlast you. But if you're a spell-based mid-range deck, you'll probably be fine. Like if Spell Demon Hunter becomes a thing again, that would probably be okay. I think Arcane Hunter, which you could argue is aggro towards like a mid-range section. It's got a lot of weapons in there, and your Titan and stuff, and a lot of spells. That'll probably be fine as well. What won't be fine is Enrage Warrior. I think he's going to have a really difficult time with this card. They generate pretty big boards. They have... it's generally just they have pretty big boards that would otherwise be pretty hard to remove. You just Reno the board, clear it, get rid of it, and they have big sad times. And if you were going to try and run Reno in your own deck to counter your opponent doing that, Enrage Warrior will not be a good Highlander deck because there's not enough support for that package. Excavation Death Knight's not viable. It's just don't run it. I don't think it'd be a tier 4 deck. They will just remove away your best minion. Big Rogue, which sort of came to the limelight recently with the big nerfs to the... some of the big legendaries with big board-changing effects. If you've got a Death Rattle effect, you're in your deck's based around Death Rattle, you're screwed. Same with Taunt Warrior. They have a lot of Death Rattle-based cards. You're screwed. The Death Rattle won't go off, so you won't get the value. I've put on here Beast Hunter, or the Value Beast Hunter. I've seen some people speculating that these Death Rattle Beast packages will be more value than aggro. Well, if that's the case, you're going to lose to Reno, because you won't get the value from the Death Rattle Beasts. I just put Druid on here. I think Druid's just going to be miserable with this card. They don't particularly have a strong aggro package right now. They don't have a particularly strong package full stop, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, but they were lining up towards this, the Highlander Dragon package. But now you have to be so careful with Rheastraza that I'm not entirely certain anymore that it will be a tier 1 deck. I honestly think this card is so scary into it that it could just have sad times. I think some of the control and combo decks out there, they're just going to smoke you. If they Reno your egg, you're screwed. You just won't outlast them anymore. Pure Paladin, again, this is like the classic mid-range deck. Screwed. Elemental Mage, you didn't even get a chance. You're probably going to have Age One in that deck. If Age One gets removed, again, you're having big sad time. And then finally, Earthen Paladin. They have got a few Death Rattles, kind of towards the control mid-range side of things. You won't have enough value to outlast any deck running Reno. So my biggest pet peeve for this card is that there are decks that wouldn't have run Highlander in the past. And in fact, decks that are currently being run will be run as Highlander to fit Reno into the deck. And I think that is just a really sucky way to play the game. I wouldn't even be surprised if Mage has a crack at it. Rainbow Mage. They've got a lot of good cards. They cut some really, really good cards to keep the deck, as concise as possible. They could easily run this as a Highlander deck and put Reno in there just for... 5 extra health is, no mean thing to, sniff at. It makes your button better. You can heal off the button potentially as well. And if you ever get a pesky board, if you're in the mirror and they get their full board of 4 or 5 minions with various bonus effects, and you just Reno it, well, GG. 8 mana, they've cleared your board, and then they can have their own board still. It's such a disgusting tempo swing that I honestly think this card is going to warp the meta. It's not going to be the... I'm so excited for new expansion days normally that, lots of people are going to be playing new decks and so on. And I just hate the idea that the day 1 decks are all going to be Highlander decks of decks that are already out there, and they just put Reno in it. And it'll be like whoever draws Reno first to get that huge swing turn will win. I really don't like this card. Going back to the hero power though, just before I finish this video. Generally the hero power buttons are pretty good. I've green ticked the ones that I think are particularly good. The yellow one is kind of like, yeah, that's okay. And then red ones you probably don't want most of the time. 2 damage refresh 2 mana crystals, basically your hero power costs 0. That's good. Drawing cards is typically pretty good in... Well, I say drawing cards is pretty good. If you're in a control matchup, sometimes you don't want to draw the card, but if you're in any other matchup, like versus aggro, for example, you want to draw as many answers to their cards as possible, in which case the Fetal Bullet's good for that. Also a pretty good control button just in general. Like, it's the Shadow Form effect with a buff to it. And I know Shadow Form's used as an aggressive deck, but you can often use that just to ping off enemy minions and feel pretty happy about it. Frost Bullet, I think, is really good for a control matchup that's giving you 4 armor. The Nature Bullet discovers a spell. Spell is value. You can discover an answer to your opponent's board. I think in most cases that's going to be a pretty good get. The 3-cost minion is going to be fairly middling, I think. 3-cost minions really range from stat lines. Like, you can get the... I think there's one in there that's a 1/1 to the... Oh, what's that? The Reborn Undead card, right? 5/4... like Reborn Undead die. If you get that via the bullet, the Shadow Bullet, you're laughing, right? And I think the 2 weakest ones, the fire one, which is 1 damage to all enemy minions, occasionally that's going to, pay off, but for the most part, your opponent's not going to have a board full of 1 health minions. However, you could clear off a 3 health minion with it, so I don't think it's without value. And then the Holy Bullet, I'm suspecting right now, having seen all the sets and, where the state of the meta is right now, we're still not going to have a big minion versus minion combat. The aggro decks will be playing all the minions. The combo control decks will be playing all of the spells and fast minion answers. In which case, you're probably not going to have that many minions on your board, in which case the Holy Bullet wouldn't be buffing anything. So I think it's kind of like a minor effect. But still, as I said, if you have the Holy Bullet shows up first time, you maybe have like 1 minion on the board, you play your Reno, clear their board, and you get to push the button as well, and then give your minion +2/+2, making it even harder for your opponent to clear your board. 1 minion space, you've lost your locations, you've lost your entities. Good luck! Anyway, I don't want to seem too down about it, but I really wish this card was not neutral for starters, that everyone didn't have access to it. And also, I wish it wasn't such a huge game-changing effect that I think control decks will have to run, but combo decks will just laugh at. I think that is a really awkward space to be in. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. We have, I think, 2 or 3 more cards to see. Depending on how quickly they're revealed, maybe we'll try and put them all in the same video. Otherwise, we'll do these 1-card reveal videos. And then after this, I'm going to have to do the star ratings. And I might actually do star ratings now with them. Ratings before I saw this card and ratings after I saw this card, because, oh boy, there's going to be a lot more 1-stars than I thought there were going to be. Anyway, see you again tomorrow, hopefully. Goodbye.